So we were talking about Fetterman, dude. I mean, that guy.
I just I need someone. First off, forego the stroke face and his inability to collect a coherent thought. Like somebody take that man at least to TJ Maxx and buy him a suit. Like, come on, he actually took a press conference in a hoodie and basketball shorts. Like, dude, come on. At the end of
And
the
then they
day,
were, and they were asking the bankers. Are like, oh, they were speechless. I'm like, dude, nobody understood what in the heck he was asking.
yeah, it
Like, he
was.
started talking about SNAP benefits. Like, what? Or what? Do it's like we're the actual bank owners. And dude, my closed caption on DirecTV could not keep up. Literally, it was like Fox News, here's John Fetterman, and then it blacked out for like 42 seconds, and then and then went like to the banker. And I feel sorry. I mean, I don't know if C-SPAN, do they still do like the hearing impaired, the sign language? Like, I mean, what is that lady doing? Or guy? I guess it could be a guy.
Bro, she or they, to be politically
They.
correct, they probably look like they're having an aneurysm when he talks. They're just like, I don't know how to translate, der. Yeah. So but at the end of the day, like you can't fix that, right? Because that's now his wiring. But for the love of God, go get that man a proper suit.
Okay, proper suit. So what is the minimum? I agree. He looked like a buffoon up there with those stupid shorts. Roger looks like he does his yard in, and a hoodie that is still too big for
I,
even
I don't
Fetterman's
do my
fat
I don't
ass.
do my yard.
Yeah, we
Just
know,
saying.
but you still look stupid in those shorts. So, but Josh, like that's unacceptable. I agree. But I also, if I was, I wouldn't wear a suit. I might wear a suit with no tie because a cravat is the stupidest creation. If I never wear another cravat again, I'll be just fine. A tie. So when you said like, what's the minimum acceptable attire for, you know,
Not cutoffs.
so it has to
The
be a
minimum.
suit. It has to be a suit. You sound like the man.
I would
You sound like the
say
902nd commander.
I would say that if you're going to sit in the Senate chamber in a hearing, then you should be in a suit and tie.
Yeah, I don't agree.
I think that's the minimum
Why? Why?
for a suit and tie
Why?
because it's the Senate chamber.
Well, why not a
You don't
tuxedo
get to
then?
go.
Does it matter how much the suit costs?
No, it doesn't matter how much the suit
So
costs.
you just like somebody in a tie.
If I mean, I feel like if you're going to represent your constituents in Washington, in the Capitol, in the United States
Oh,
Senate,
that's
I feel like you should be in a suit and tie. It's kind of like going to church,
that's
right?
interesting
I think you
because
I think
around
you should be
here,
in a suit and tie when you go to church.
at church, nobody wears a suit. Around here,
I
last
think
time
that's
people wore
disrespectful.
it, oh, it's disrespectful to God because He really cares if you're in a suit or
Well,
not.
it
I
does
think
depend on where you're at too, though,
I
right?
think so.
It
Well, I
does
think it's
depend on
dumb.
where you're at
You should
because
wear a tux
out
to
here in
church. Then you
Arizona,
should. You know what? You should save up all your money and buy the nicest clothes possible because anything less than that is disrespectful to God. That's just dumb. That's stupid.
Oh, so this is gonna be a good one.
I
one of
have
them
never
episodes.
ever
It's gonna be one of them episodes.
since I've been in this job right now. If I would have walked in on a suit with a suit on the first time I went to any of these people, and I've met with mayors of not huge cities, but mayors. I've met with I met with what's his name? Shoot, the representative up here. Either way, nobody's wearing a suit up here. Nobody's wearing a suit. So, but I will say
Okay.
this: if okay, you know
Well,
what the
when John
sheriff, wears on a daily basis, Randall County Sheriff, he wears some decent slacks, okay, like cowboy type slacks that are boot cut. He wears his boots. He wears a nice Western type shirt. It doesn't have designs on it or anything, but it's nice. He got it from a Western wear store, and he wears a sport jacket with no tie. Okay, that perfectly represents those constituents up there. If I was a representative from up in Amarillo, that's exactly what I'd wear. That's exactly what I'd wear with no tie. Fuck a tie.
if you went to go brief, if you were asked to come brief Congress and you were going to go and brief, let's
On
say,
what?
pick your committee, pick your House or Senate committee at the U.S. Capitol, what would you wear?
Probably what I described, but minus the Western type stuff. What I'm going to wear to a funeral tomorrow. How about that? And it's not a
You wouldn't
suit.
wear a tie.
No, not if I didn't have to. If I'm briefing on behalf of somebody who tells me what I have to wear, then yeah. But no, dude, I'm not
You're
going to do that. I'm done. I'm fucking
okay.
almost 50 years old, and I'm done. I got to brief the Congress.
Okay, I
Ooh,
mean,
I'm scared of the Congress. Whatever,
Well,
dude.
no, there's
It's
different. It's
not about
different
being
because
scared of the Congress.
yeah.
It's about if you were to go meet the president in
So
the Oval Office,
so
what would you wear?
everything I just described, the sheriff, right? If he's wearing a tie, that's
Well,
okay
when John
with
Fetterman,
you. That's okay
when
with
John
you. I said
Fetterman
that was
comes in
unacceptable.
briefs,
I said that was unacceptable. Did I
when John
not?
Fetterman comes in briefs to Midland, Odessa sheriff,
Did I not say that was
and chief of
unacceptable?
police, he doesn't have to wear a suit.
Did I not say that was unacceptable? I said that was unacceptable what he's wearing. You're saying anything less than a tie and a suit from Walmart, that's acceptable. A $60 suit from Walmart with a cheap tie and nasty loafers, that's okay.
I think if you're in the United States Capitol, you should probably be in a suit.
Well, I
if you're
think
there
I
doing
think
official
I think
business.
you're a little bit orthodox there, but whatever. If you want to,
I think
if you want
you're
to
wrong.
dance and dress up for the man, cool. You do you. You do you, man.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I'm gonna do
whatever.
me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give them.
You're that-
I'm
you're-
gonna
you're those
dress
people
at a
that watch
level
it.
of respect that they deserve. I mean that.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna go into the Capitol in a banana hammock and a light coat.
What did I say? What did I say? I said what Fetterman was wearing was unacceptable. And you're trying to turn it around that I'm not saying that.
Well, what's it?
You're
what's
saying
acceptable?
that anything less than in your world, anything less than a tie is not acceptable. But as long as it's a tie and a cheap ass suit, good to go. That's so dumb. And it's like God cares what you're wearing in the house of God. That's so stupid, bro. That's so dumb.
God doesn't care
That's
what you wear in the house.
That's what the Pharisees would say. That's what the Pharisees and the Sadducees would say. No, you got to.
See, you don't even understand my point, because it's not that God doesn't care what you wear to his house. It's you should care what you wear to God's house.
No, I don't agree.
And if you have a suit and tie and you own one, then that's what you should wear to God's house.
Well, that seems kind of dumb.
Well, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's like your opinion, man.
Yeah, we both got
to quote the Big Lebowski.
We've got opinions on this show. Okay, well, I like getting worked up like that. That was cool. So, okay,
I do got to say though,
I know where
hold
you
on,
stand
because
I know where you stand. I understand. Yeah, but I think the day of the tie needs to go away, and I think it will.
I am not a fan of ties.
I don't like them either.
Everybody knows that, man. I'm a shorts and flip flops guy, but I have to say I agree with Josh with the Senate and Congress, because it's not who I'm talking to. There is a value. There is some tradition, right? That you're respecting, and I believe that's how you honor that tradition and our forefathers. I don't give a crap about Adam Schiff and those guys are Republicans or whatever. It's not who I'm talking to. It's the house that our forefathers built. So that to me is how I show some respect. It's kind of like wrestlers, right? When wrestlers go into the ring, you see old school wrestlers. They still wear the long lace up boots, and what do they do when they walk in the ropes? They wipe their feet, and they wipe their feet before they walk in there, just as a sign of respect to the forefathers of wrestling and to honor the squared circle.
Well, that's not surprising that both you guys are so indoctrinated and orthodox like that. You're going to wear, you endorse an article of clothing that has absolutely no use in the modern day, just for show. Just for show. That's so dumb. And it's separate. It's just dumb. It's stupid.
So then in that vein, then why not wear the cutoff sweatpants and hoodie?
Because it looks stupid.
Oh my Jesus!
No, that's a little too far, man. You dress. Look, why is it too far?
The same argument you're making for us against us is the same argument that we can make against you about whatever you want to wear with your tieless,
Okay.
Calvin
Put it to you this way.
Cut off sleeveless
put it
shirt.
to you this way. How about this? How about this? I'll put it to you this way. If his constituents are okay with that, so am I. I don't care. Whatever. How about that? But I go so far as to say, if they are okay with it, man, I guarantee there are a lot of people that are embarrassed by it. I'm going to wear something that's not embarrassing. Something
it depends on the time of year.
Yeah, but I'm not.
And where you're at, like here in Arizona,
if I'm told
they always ask, okay, you say business casual, and they're like, "Was this Arizona business casual?" Like Arizona July business casual is shorts, flip flops, and a collared shirt. However, you can get a collar on that shirt, that's what's going to happen because it's 115 degrees outside. But that's just here.
God, and his shoes are bad too. You see his shoes? They're dirty. He's wearing dirty shoes.
Did you see the picture today on Twitter with him and I guess it was the other other representative from Pennsylvania. They're sitting in lawn chairs, and they're like, "It's Lawn Chair Friday" or something like.
Yeah, I
Dude,
saw
that would
that.
piss me off.
It was the long caucus, is what they called
Yeah.
it. Yeah, the long caucus. No, I mean with Luke, that's cool though because I mean it's not a
That's
you're not
all. I'm just saying
disrespecting
it's
it or
all. It's
anything.
all for show. It's just clothing. It doesn't really matter. Part of it is that Fetterman's a freaking idiot. And I go so far as to say this: if this guy was on y'all's side and he was your favorite, you might not be saying the same thing you're saying. That's all.
I would absolutely say the same thing I'm
Okay,
saying.
well, we'll see.
If you're going into the Senate, if you're going into the Capitol building, and especially if you're sitting on a committee and you're
unless that's on January 6th, though, right, Josh? Unless it's on January 6th, then you can wear a Chewbacca outfit with horns
Loincloth.
on. That's cool, though.
No, those idiots should have never went in there.
That was pretty cool, though.
Yeah, I mean it was dumb.
No, I'm just saying the outfit, not
the
storming
outfit,
the
yeah, the
Capitol.
loincloth and the Viking helmet, yeah, sure, yeah.
So what about women then? So they all got to wear what Nancy Pelosi wears. They all got to wear the pantsuit.
Dude, you could ask my daughters. My daughters,
They could
like
be in
when
a
they
skirt with a blazer.
when they started going to dances and proms and this and that, I'm an old school guy. I'm like, hey man, that shit better come down to your knees. I mean, that's just the way I've brought up. That's the way, and I get it. It's old fashioned, old school, but that's just my upbringing.
Women should be in equivalent business attire.
Business attire, so dumb.
It's the people's house. Like why?
The pantsuit,
dude. The pantsuit, a skirt with
Hillary
a blazer,
Clinton.
like whatever. Like yeah, you can walk in there with your Hillary Clinton, pantsuit on, looking like Dr. Evil. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever.
I think they should all wear tuxedos. If that's where we're going with it, if it's the people's house, it doesn't need to be just a suit. It needs to be like, no joke, Titanic formal. Like Titanic, 9-course meal, soup to nuts, formal. Because that's what the people deserve. Not just
I will say
suit.
that I've never.
You know what? Tuxedo only if it's tails. Only if it's tails.
Hell yes, tails. Tails
I've
and a
never
top
seen a
hat
picture-
and a cane and a monocle, just like Mr. Peanut, because that's classy.
I have never seen a picture of our forefathers in cutoffs and tennis shoes. Just saying.
Yeah, but they did have knickers.
And I get it. They're
They had
paintings
knickers.
and, whatever.
See, y'all
fine
are the
with
same
knickers.
people who want powdered wigs and stuff like that because that's respect. Powdered wig is respect. That's what the people deserve.
I think looking at the three of us, and the status of our hair, powdered wigs would actually be
The YouTube viewers are like, yeah, please, yes.
But you know what? I mean, that's a good point, right? If go along you guys' line of thought, which I'm not saying it's a bad one. I just say I don't agree with it. But if you're going along that line of thought, I think about like church back in the day. Okay, now hear me out. I think about church back in the day where I've got this fat elder up there who's giving a little speech to the church about how you shouldn't drink and you shouldn't smoke because the body is a temple, right? And he's just a fat piece of whatever with heart disease written all over his face. It's like, well, the body's a temple. Maybe you should, work out a little bit. If you're going to be respectful, right? Do you think that going down that line of thought, and I could get with this part, is maybe you should be taking care of your body a little bit for your constituents. You don't got to look like Schwarzenegger or nothing, but you probably shouldn't be like a fat piece of garbage, looking like slovenly. I think that's disrespectful. What do you think? Or the suit makes the man, like Nadler up there with his gut and his suit pulled up to here. Oh, well, at least he's wearing a suit because that's respectful. I mean, don't you think that somebody should like take care of their body and like kind of be, a good, healthy representative of the people?
Yeah,
I think you can do both.
Cool. Because I'm going to be so jacked. When I'm a senator, I'm going to be so jacked. You guys are going to be begging me to wear a tank top and shorts because I'm just so jacked.
You're never going to be a senator.
Oh, really? Challenge accepted.
You're never gonna be a senator.
Well, thanks for the vote of confidence, Josh. You're never even going to be on city council. You're not even going to win school board.
You're probably right.
Something's got Luke fired up. So why don't you just go ahead and tip that can over?
No, well, y'all want to talk about what we were talking about earlier?
Yeah,
he's mad. He's mad because too many Karens jumped on his post.
No, only two. So basically, I went to my first city council meeting because we've been talking on this podcast, the three of us, about, you got to get involved in your community. You got to do this, you got to do that, because it all begins at the local level. And we all three agree with that. But man, life gets busy, right? And most people, they just don't have time. So you got to carve that out, So I was like, you know what? It'd be real easy to skip this because, I've got other stuff going on. I should be right now, instead of recording, I should be helping my wife and the kids that were setting up for a garage sale tomorrow to sell all their stuff after he graduated, but they're out doing that and I'm here recording, and I could have been doing that last Tuesday when the meeting was, but I called a buddy of mine, or a listener actually, and he kind of held me to it. He's like, you need to come to this one because this one's going to be good. So I went ahead and went. I felt like I'd be letting him down if I didn't go, and I did go. I felt good, and I liked it. I thought it was really good. It was a really good meeting. But there's some drama going on in our city, right? And the drama boils down to this. And admittedly, I don't know a lot about it. So, and I don't know a lot of the details. And why don't I know the details? Because I haven't been involved in the community and in the process. And I learned that at the city council meeting. I was like, wow, this is something I should. Number one, I should have been tracking more closely. And number two, everyone else should have been too. And when I say everyone else, I don't mean every single person. A few people were tracking it closely, but none of them were on city council. They're just like the voices in the community. A lot of them older, older, probably retired, put it to you that way. They might have more time. So the issue going on in the community is I live in it's Ransom Canyon. It's about, I don't know, 1,600 residents. It's outside of Lubbock, Texas. And it's its own incorporated city. And you got down in the canyon when there's a lake. You drive down into it. Now, at the top of the canyon, probably the majority of the homes. It kind of goes back maybe a half a mile. And in this one specific part where there was nothing, they decided to make a development. Okay. Now, in a town of 1,600 people with a lake, it's not a gated community, but not everyone can come and get in the lake. You know what I'm saying? You have to be a resident of the community to get in the lake, to use the pool, stuff like that. So this development, everybody's thinking, I guess, well, I was thinking, oh, well, they're going to be able to put, I don't know, maybe 30 homes on here, because the homes here, the homes here range from anywhere from, $3 to $6 million, all the way down to the 300s. Okay. So it's a nice little range out here. So I think everybody in the community kind of figured that the range up in that development will be, in the 3 to 400s. Okay. So in this development, here's the issue. It came to light that there are going to be 60 units in this development, 60 units. You can't buy multiple lots and build one home. Each lot is going to have a house on it. The house is going to be, I believe, 1,700 square feet. Now, yeah. So you know what that means. I don't know. People know what that means, but that's where the concern came in. It's like, wait a minute. Because the current deed restrictions or whatever it is, and this is where I got to get smart on this stuff, say that the house has to be no less than something like, I don't know, 2,000 square feet. And I'm just pulling that number out, but it's more than 1,700. It's 2,000 square feet here would be a small house. Put it to you that way. One of the smaller ones. But the only way to get over 1,700 is they go 2 stories. So people started looking into the publicly available information and seeing none of these houses, none of the models are 2 stories. These are going to be 1,700 or less square feet. They can't be more because of the, I'm forgetting all the terms. Anyway, basically what people are worried about is it's going to turn into a bunch of rentals. And maybe one developer will come out there, buy all 60 lots and rent them all out. Well, in Lubbock, Texas, that is not a good thing. I'll just put it to you that way. It's a risky thing. I understand the need for rental properties, but rental family homes here in Lubbock, generally that don't go too great. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, there's some upset residents about that. And when I think about the city council meeting, I'm going on and on and on here. I'm just kind of trying to tell a story. And I've got more to say about it, but I'm going to kick it over to you guys after I say what the residents' problems were. The residents' problems were, okay, who agreed to this? Number one. Number two, is there any way to change it? And number three, I guess it goes along with number one, who agreed to this, and did they know that this was going to happen? And why didn't we know more about it? The answer to number one was who agreed to this is, seriously, that's like the answer from city council. The other answers, the questions are just basically no and I don't know. So the residents are very upset about it. And at one point, there was a guy, and I had this gentleman standing next to me. He's a little older gentleman. He's lived out here for a while. He's kind of narrating when people would stand up and talk. He's narrating, okay, this is this person. This is what they do. This is their stance. We had a builder who had concerns. We had a real estate agent who's here, we're in the city, who's all for it. And her thing was, well, everybody, there's nothing we can do to change this, so we might as well make the best of it. And she's a good talker, right? So, and then this other dude, but there was one other guy standing there. And this was, I'm going to kick it to Josh, okay? There was a guy sitting to the side of city council. I was like, who's that dude? That's the lawyer. I was like, there's a lawyer here? He's like, yeah. I was like, why? And they're like, well, the city retained a lawyer. I'm like, the city retained a lawyer, you say? And then we're getting into government. I know this is probably boring for a lot of listeners, but this is where my blood started to boil, and I'll talk about it here in a minute. So all of these issues were supposed to be addressed by the development company. Okay, the development company, they were supposed to answer questions that night. The development company pulled out 24 hours before the meeting, before the city council meeting. So they just didn't show up. So now it's just city council who has to answer questions. So people are asking questions and city council is not answering. So people are like, why aren't you answering? And the lawyer chimes in and says, well, since the developer pulled their whatever and they're not showing up, city council doesn't have to answer these questions. And that's when I spoke up. And I said, they don't have to, but they can. And he looks at me, and I just went like this. I was like, right? And he goes, well, and he addressed the group after I said that. So I was upset that my city council, my representatives, the mayor, are using a lawyer, and the lawyer is advising them not to answer their constituents' questions. So, Josh, did I leave anything out of that makes it, like, think from a listener standpoint? Do you understand what I just said? Does that make sense? Did I paint a picture there of what's going on, and what do you think about it?
Yeah, I understood it. Now, if I can understand it, then the rest of our listeners can understand it. It's absolutely terrible. It's absolutely terrible. Your city council should all be fired. Quite honestly, every single last one of them. You should not need a lawyer to talk to your constituents. You should not need to go through a lawyer to answer questions from your constituents. Now, at some point, there's probably some, statute, some legislation that was passed, is probably, stuck into a bill somewhere about, some bill for, let's give school kids free lunches, because who wants to vote against that one, right? That, there has to be a lawyer present, at all these meetings, and that it says that the city council doesn't have to answer any question they don't want to. And people probably didn't even notice that statute, that policy got passed or whatever. It was done in a vacuum. But yeah, it's terrible. Your city council sucks. Your city council should all be fired. If they can't talk to you one-on-one without a lawyer present, then you have you've got a lot more issues where you live than you previously thought.
So let me add on to that real quick. And I'll read something after I get Roger's input on this. I'll read what I wrote on the little on the Nextdoor app. I'm starting to like Nextdoor more and more. A lot of drama on Nextdoor, a lot of Karens, like it. But I'll tag on to this. What Josh said, Roger, is that even if everything was on the up and up, because I don't know all the terminology for this, but I'm going to learn. Since that developer pulled out, city council is not the quote unquote experts, although they should be. They should be the expert on all this stuff. They should be able to answer all these things because it had to go through them at some point. But let's just give city council the benefit of the doubt and say that everything was on the up and up. They retain the lawyer because they don't want to get sued. They don't want the city to get sued because they screwed up. Okay. And they don't want to say anything out of school. Still, by putting yourself in that situation, okay, you made a mistake at some point. But number two, even if everything was on the up and up, having that lawyer there was bad optics. It makes everyone think something screwed up's going on here. It just didn't sit right, you know?
Yeah, totally agree. And with the lawyer being present, what that tells me immediately up front, and I'll be upfront with you, I have yet to go to one of my, towns, conferences, city halls, or anything. Same excuses that you brought up, and fortunately, I don't have anybody out here to make me go. But the perception that having a lawyer there gives me is that you are here talking about the town council. You are here to protect your job, not do what you think is best for the community. Because and this is, I think you can take a town that's as small as Ransom Canyon to a mid-sized town to, all the way up to our nation's representatives. They are so worried about keeping their jobs and being fired, as opposed to, hey, look, man, I'm going to do what I honestly think is best for this community. And, I'll take input. People call them flip floppers and this and that, and there are flip floppers, right? They just kind of go with the wave, as opposed to, okay, new information has been presented to me, the situation's changed, and now my opinion has changed. Like, I have no issues with any of that stuff. And at the end of the day, if you don't like my ideas, or we're not headed in the direction that you think our town, should go or needs to go, or the majority thinks that it needs to go, then guess what? You won't reelect me. But that's not the world that we live in. And it's funny, not funny, haha, but you wouldn't think it would happen in a town as small as yours, because especially with that many people, you would think it would be more like, hey guys, this is kind of how we want to go, and this is what we're doing. The town that I live in now, we're starting to grow, and we've doubled in size, and we're starting to see some of those growing pains, right? Where now we're really starting to see a left wing side, of quote unquote progressive side, or whatever. But it's just a bunch of people that are trying to protect their jobs because they want to keep their salary for the next 4 years, as opposed to, this is what I believe in, these are my principles, this is what I think. It's no different than, for those that watch, it's no different than what's going on in the sitcom or the series Yellowstone. When he becomes the governor of Montana, he's like, progress is exactly what I'm against. And it's like, hey, here is my view of what should happen here. And guess what? This is what I think is right. And I think all three of us are fine with, if you don't think that's the right way, then don't vote for me. Don't put me in office. But if you do, then I'm the guy for the job, right? So that's what the lawyer tells me. I get the legal process on the backside. And again, I'm like you, dude. I'm totally uneducated when it comes to this process. And even our town, I don't know if yours does the same, but our town actually has a class. I think they run it every summer, where it's like 8 weeks, where they teach you like city development, the process and this and that. And I understand a legal review. Hey, you know what? I don't even have a problem with, after the town council, after the meeting or whatever, having a legal review done. I have no issues. I understand the lawsuit piece of that. Hey, and put out the next day, hey, here are a couple of things we had to clarify here. We can't do this legally because of whatever statute or whatever the case is, right? But to have somebody there, just tells me you're there to protect yourself. You're there to protect your job. You don't give two craps about you think you're doing what's best for the community. You don't give a crap about that.
I think that's great that the town, city, whatever it is that you're in, does that city development process class. Like, basically, it sounds to me like they're kind of, it should be like the city manager gets in, or not, maybe not the city manager, but somebody gets in there and said, hey, this is my job, this is what we do. I think that's great. And
I think our current mayor is a recent graduate. She's younger, and I think if I remember correctly, I think she may have graduated this thing like 3 or 4 years ago, and then ran for mayor and won.
well, see, I mean, down here, I think it would be less of a class and more of like, hey, we're going to use the community center. We have a really nice community center here. We're going to use the community center, and once a month, we're going to put on this informative seminar, or whatever you want to call it, and you just kind of educate the people on, this is what we do, right? I think that's a great idea. And I actually took a note, and
You should bring it
I'm
up.
gonna bring
Hey,
it.
dude, I will shoot you. You know what? Remind me, and I will pull it up, because they show the agenda and dude, it is legit. Like 8 weeks, you go, I think, one day a week or something like that, or whatever it is. And when you graduate, you're actually like a apprentice,
Yeah.
town planner or whatever the heck it is, that thing is. But I'll pull it up
Yeah,
for you.
send me that. One thing I wrote a little note here when you were talking is something you said spurred this thought. It's like they're running this small town. The way they're running it is the way they're running it as if it's Houston, Dallas, Raleigh, or Phoenix, right? This is a small community. It has to be
Right.
run differently than that, in my opinion. I looked up the voting numbers actually because I went over to our listener's house. Y'all saw the picture and y'all ragged on us and everything, but he's a good dude. He's a loyal listener. He's a great
We
guy.
weren't ragging on him. We were
Ragging on me.
ragging
I
on
know.
you.
I know.
That's
Okay. Okay. That's a good point. So we talked a little while, and the city just had elections, and I didn't even know that elections occurred, and we were talking about that. And again, that's my fault. That's my fault for not knowing that. But at the same time, well, we'll get into that in a minute. But the listener posted on Nextdoor because he was really worked up. This is what he posted. I'm reading it word for word. Winter Ransom Canyon city's official voting days for mayor, alderman, etc. How do citizens know who is running for that position? How are citizens notified of the voting dates? How far in advance is it announced? Why are there no debates or times to ask a candidate about their vision? That's a good question, right? And a couple people, replied like with a website and said, just because it's not on Facebook or Nextdoor doesn't mean that the information's not out there. Here's the website to go to. And it's like, okay, there's a point. So I was like, I told you guys about it. You guys actually read it before I sent it out. I was like, what do y'all think? Give me a sanity check on this. So this was kind of my reply to some of the previous replies where some people were calling him out and whatnot. And I think this kind of encapsulates most of what the three of us think. But keep in mind when I read this, I didn't spend hours putting this together. I just kind of threw it all down. So bear with me as I read it. And Josh, I'm going to kick it to you after I read this, and you tell me what you hear in this that you agree with, and if there's anything you disagree or could be improved upon. All right. So I said, quote, I'm a big believer in representative government, especially at the local level. I believe the reason our founding fathers designed our form of government is because they intended the local government to have the highest and strictest levels of accountability to the people. This is apparent in that local government representatives, which can have the most impact on daily life, actually live in the community with their constituents. The constituents know who they are, who their spouse is, what they drive, where they live, and in some cases, in small towns, what they had for dinner the night before. This is a healthy thing. These facts serve as a virtual guarantee that the government representatives are held accountable to their constituents. Unfortunately, over the past 50 plus years, there's been a reversal in mind and practice, in that most Americans believe deep down that the power to affect daily life resides at the federal level rather than at the local level. This is a sad state of affairs since our federal representatives are the least accountable due to distance, bureaucracy, and separation from the community. During my 2 years living in Ransom Canyon, I've been very busy with work, as most of you undoubtedly are. Because I've been on the road, I've missed many community gatherings, along with city council meetings, POA meetings, church services, and as some of you know, the occasional speed limit change. Ha ha. Y'all remember that story, right? Over the last couple of weeks, I resolved to change that and become more involved in the community. There's some truth to what Jennifer and Ingram posted. It is our responsibility to be more involved in our representative government. It is also the responsibility of the representative government to ensure every step is taken to inform the community, even if that means going door to door. Based on what I've seen, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, the voter turnout for Ransom Canyon is about 22 to 25%. I will cast no stones, but I will say I've resolved to do what I can as a resident and citizen of Ransom Canyon to bring that number up. I did finally attend a city council meeting this week. I must say I like most of what I observed. It's local representative government at work. It's not always pretty, and that's the nature of the beast. It's equally important for citizens and representatives to realize that executing and participating in local government is a conversation. These conversations should be intimate, sometimes messy, honest, and a candid affair. I don't know about y'all, but some of the most heated and passionate conversations I've had have been with family and my closest friends. Little side note there, was anybody paying attention to the first 5 minutes of the podcast? I'm just saying. The most important aspect of a conversation, it must go two ways. Simply because our representatives don't have to address an issue doesn't mean they can't address the issue. Anytime a representative has to look to a lawyer to speak for them or address why the representative won't speak to the issue, well, it's just a bad optic all the way around. That said, I know for a fact being a representative is a thankless job, an up at dawn, pride-swallowing siege that most can't understand. At least it should be. I enjoyed meeting some of y'all for the first time. I look forward to becoming more involved in this community and holding myself accountable to that. So, Josh, what do you think? I had somebody walk by. My wife and I were standing out on the deck. Had some neighbors down the street walk by. They saw us up there. We waved. And they go, "So you running for mayor?" I mean, in anywhere in that post did it say, "I'm interested in being mayor"? So, what did you think about that post, Josh?
It sounded to me like an opening for, you're getting ready to file papers for a campaign. That right there. That's what, and I mean, you're saying all the right things right now, right? You're putting stuff like that out there, and you're like, I'm not running for mayor, guy. I'm not running. It's just not for me, right? And then next thing the Federal Election Commission, gets your paperwork, and next thing Luke's a candidate. So I agree with 100% of it. But 100%, there's nothing in there that I disagree with. The founders believed in representative government at every level. But they certainly, even at the time, as we weren't as connected. Most people lived in, well, not most people, but there was quite a few people who lived in rural areas. They understood that the federal government in Washington D.C. would not impact, you know, rural, North Carolina voters. By and large, it was going to be those locally elected representatives that were going to be the ones that impacted their day-to-day lives.
Hey, but brother,
up and more.
But brother, since the population was so thin back then, right? Brother, if some decision that was made at the federal level affected them, you better believe, especially their representative that sits in the House, you better believe everybody knows where that dude lives. And when he comes back,
oh yeah,
if some decision, not necessarily that he made, but that his colleagues on the other side of the aisle or whatever made, brother, he's going to hear about it, and it ain't going to be pretty.
But, 100%.
We just don't live in that world anymore.
No, we don't live in that world, because you were going to catch that guy back then. You were going to catch that guy, not only, at his house, you're going to catch that guy at the pub. Yep, because there's only one. And you know each other. You're going to see them at church, right? Because there's only one. And he's not going to be in a hoodie and shorts. So I think it's fantastic. I think, and you motivated me. I did some some introspective thoughts, and now I've got the date for our next county commissioner meeting, because the little town that we live in is unincorporated, but we have a county commission, and they have their meetings and such. So I need to get more involved in the local, at the local level as well. We've encouraged listeners. We all need to, and you guys absolutely should. So I definitely appreciate the you putting that out there, because it kind of rejuvenated me to take a look around and get involved as well.
One of our listeners, Roger, I think we've got probably 12 listeners named Chris. So I don't think by saying the name Chris is going to point out exactly who it is. But he was talking about running for sheriff where he lives. And I was like, man, you absolutely should do that. And man, he could get elected, I think.
Yeah. Sheriff, and if anything, COVID showed us how important county sheriffs are. County sheriffs are critical to your day-to-day life and your day-to-day freedom. They absolutely are. I would say sheriffs are more consequential than your representative to the U.S. House of Representatives, as far as impact on your day-to-day life. Regardless of where you're at, sheriff, constable, whatever they call them. Thankfully, our county sheriff, nobody can run against him, because I think last election he won 89% of the vote in our county. But the good thing is that he is as conservative and as they come. And he displayed that during COVID. He's displayed that during the current administration's crackdown on the Second Amendment. We're to a sanctuary county. They have been very clear they are not enforcing federal gun laws to include the pistol brace, not law, because it's not a law, the pistol brace policy that the elected officials at the ATF, put in place that goes into effect at the end of this month. That's going to turn tens, probably hundreds of thousands of Americans into overnight felons. Um, but yeah, your county sheriff folks can't cannot cannot stress that enough. Go find you a Buford pusser and get them into office.
And I think that's being challenged right now too. I mean, I'd be surprised if there's not a stay put on that. I forget it's not the NRA. There's another big group that's challenging it. So I'd be surprised if there wasn't a decision that comes back to say, slow your roll, let this thing work itself out through the lower courts, kind of like they did with was it Illinois, where the
Yeah,
Supreme Court kicked it back down to the lower, like, hey, work it out
yeah,
through the lower courts, and then we'll take a look at it.
yeah. And a bunch of people were upset. A bunch of people on the right were upset at the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court kicked it back and it's like, no, no, like we're not touching that. A bunch of people got really upset, and it's they but they didn't understand is that the lower courts hadn't made a ruling on it yet. So the Supreme Court didn't have anything to go off of. They were asking the Supreme Court for to come in and just say no, stop the process. You can't do it, and it doesn't. It didn't make any sense. I don't think people understood the. I don't think people understood the process. Let the lower courts work it out. Let the lower
Yeah.
courts make a decision, and then appeal the decision to the Supreme Court instead of going to the Supreme Court. Because I don't even think whatever. And I don't know which circuit, federal circuit covers Illinois, but the federal circuit court hadn't even ruled on it.
Right, right. And that's what we talked about before when we've gone through some of the Supreme Court cases and their rulings. It's like, of course, you only see the headlines, right? That's Illinois, Supreme Court, strikes down. It was like, no, they didn't do anything. Actually, what they said was, hey, lower courts need to rule. And I think we had covered Roe v. Wade when it first came out. It's like, look, it's important for folks to get beyond the headlines and actually go read what the opinion was, if there was even an opinion, right? A lot of times they don't even kick out an opinion. They're just like, yeah, so there's plenty of precedence on this. So lower courts, go ahead and rule on it. And then as it makes its way up, if we have to address it, then we'll address it at the time. I do want to, Luke, I was actually kind of 20 to 25%. That was the voter turnout for your town.
Yeah. 20 to 25%.
Wow, that's unreal.
Well, and I want to clarify something that I said earlier. I said there's 60. I think there's actually 62 lots on that development.
Nobody cares. Nobody was counting.
Well, okay, but I want to clarify something. No, that's not what I want to clarify. I want to clarify that when it comes to certain aspects of voting, especially in the property owners association, if you have one lot, you get one vote. If you have 3 lots, you have 3 votes. So if somebody comes in and buys all 60 of those lots, they are going to have 60 votes, which is a significant portion of, and this is interesting too. I'll make a couple points. It's interesting too. So one person, one entity owns not only the lots, but they own 60 votes, which is more than enough for a quorum on anything. So it's like, now we're in electoral college territory, right? It's like, well, wait a minute. So now with that 20, so I just said 20 to 25%. Now, if everyone else, if that person who has 60 votes is like, well, I want to do this, now you're going to have at least 75% turnout from everyone else to vote down something. So what I'm trying to get across to the community, or what I would like to try to get across to the community going forward, is we need to get more involved. It can't just be the old folks. And I mean, old folks, all due respect, it can't just be the old folks who are retired. It's got to be the rest of us too. And that's a hard sell, guys. That's a hard sell. I'm happy. I'm doing good. I'm making money. A lot of people, as usual, I live in a neighborhood where I'm the lowest income bracket, most likely. A lot of people are happy where they are, but they're going to turn around. If they don't vote, they're going to turn around the next day and be like, I can't live here anymore, for whatever reason. So it's interesting. Like, do you get, just with a nod ahead, do you get my electoral college reference there? You got one person with 60.
Yeah, I mean, and you hit something on the head there. And I see that with the 20 to 25%. voter turnout. So that tells me that most people are happy with the way things are. It's status quo, no real reason to get involved. And that's the time when you need to get involved, because, a couple of those sprinkles are starting to come, and they happen, right? A couple sprinkles here, a couple sprinkles there, not a big deal. You get a little hiccup here, you get a little blip there. But then, and I noticed this with our town, once the developers get involved, now it's become a snowball, dude. Now that thing is so huge, and now you may actually get to a point where, hey, contracts have already been agreed to. It's already passed through the town council. It's like we actually can't go back and do anything. And then, like you said, I don't know if there's like a HOA for that whole all those homes or whatever, but it's just like our house or our community here. We have 48 homes. We have 48 homes in this community, so you take half of that, 25, man, 25, you can basically do whatever it is that you want. And if you've got 60 plus odd lots there, and depending on how the rules and CCNRs and all that stuff are set up, I mean, yeah, you can do whatever you want. And then at that point, you went from, man, yesterday life was good to like today you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And it happened, and that can happen overnight.
Yeah.
So I think you bring up a valid point that it's like, hey, life's great. That's the time to become involved, or at least informed. And the voting thing. The voting thing bothers me anyway, because I mean, there's no reason why everywhere should not be 75 to 80% everywhere. I mean, it should be 75, 80% voter turnout.
I agree.
In my opinion,
And
no matter where
I
you're
think
at.
that part of that, I addressed it, and that was the original question that our listener asked. It's like, well, when are the elections, right? And somebody came back and said, well, it's on you to go to this website and find out. And it's like, well, if you're city council and you're you're the mayor, the people have put you in that place, right? And if the people don't like you or whatever, again, they're running it like Houston, Dallas, Raleigh, or Phoenix. And it's like they don't care if people turn out or not because, like Roger said, it's status quo. It's all good. We know what's going on. It's all good. We're taking care of you. Everybody's happy. I don't see it that way. I see it as no. We need to get the community more involved because this is a city, and we need to take that serious. Because if the shit goes down like it does in 1 second after, we're really going to need to know who we are, and who your neighbor is and all that. So a little idealistic. I understand. I guess I'm still young enough to be an idealist, but yeah, like I said.
Well, no, I do. Can I say something
you
real
bet.
quick
Go
because
ahead.
I want to, and I won't say her name, but somebody replied to his comment, and I won't go through the whole thing, but then it was a couple things to keep in mind. This week was a council meeting, not a town hall, because that makes a big difference, right? So let me tell you how things work here, Mr. Jones. That's exactly how that comes off. Let me tell you how things work here. And oh, by the way, every commissioner's court, city council, and school board has a legal person present. So that tells me there might be some fraud, waste, and abuse going on. So how much are you paying this lawyer an hour for how many? Well, now she said you've got council meetings and a town hall. So now you're paying for 2 meetings, right? So that's a lot of money. And then it says, yada, yada. I've had great success talking to all the aldermen and mayor. Then somebody comes in your fence like, hey, good luck with that. Many of us have suggested open discussions. Coffee with the mayor falls on deaf ears. And then she comes back. That's a question for the alderman. That's exactly what. Hey, you know what? I can't answer
Yeah.
that. I'm kind of up here, and you just need to go through your wickets and
That's
go through your process to get to me.
Total
Right?
Karen, right? And that was quickly exposed as a lie that lawyers are there every time. The listener that we have, I don't know if he likes his name mentioned or not, so that's why I'm not mentioning his name.
Sure.
He came back, was like, I've been to like 6 to I don't know how many he said. He's been to a few, and there's never been a lawyer there. So that's a lie. You're lying. I understand that lawyers have to be consulted when you're changing law. I get that, but you're lying. You're lying. And if anything, she made my point with all that stuff. And when she said
Absolutely.
that's a question for the alderman, it's like, why not the mayor? Why isn't that a question for the mayor? I know the aldermen do the dirty work. I understand. And I think part of her thing was, well, I have personal conversations with the mayor and the alderman all the time. It's like, well, again, that's kind of a bad optic, right? Because anyone who's reading that's like, well, I don't. How come you do? Everyone should, right? It's one of those things. So, it's interesting, and I could belabor it, and I could probably spend the rest of the podcast talking about it, but I won't because I know this is my community. We only have a couple listeners down here, so I want to kick it to Josh. But it is a fun topic, right? It would be a lot, and we got a bully pulpit here. I've got a bully pulpit, so it's nice. It's nice, but So I came up with a new thing. It's almost like Godwin's rule, right? Or Godwin's law, where I think it's Godwin's law, where in any online internet conversation, you know, you're going to go to a Nazi within
The Hitler, yeah,
within 12 comments.
Godwin's.
Well, I've got the Josh rule. The Josh rule is in any conversation, any subject, it doesn't matter on this podcast, he's going to end up talking about the Second Amendment. So, because we went there. It's funny. I'm not making fun of you, Josh. So I know Josh wanted to stay away from politics on this one. So I'm going to kick you a couple of topics, Josh. And if you don't want to address them, if you had something else, that's cool. Because the three of us, man, we can talk about anything. But we had kicked out like the situation going on down at the border, and we'd also kicked out how much we hate the FBI. So, I mean, you want to talk about one of those or something completely different, man? Bro, I'm game.
Actually, I got a question for Josh. Serious question, and it's on the FBI thing. And I have my own opinion, but this is not set up or staged or anything like that. With everything that's come out with the FBI, the Durham report, and I've got some snippets we can read about that later, just to give people the bottom line up front. But and we're pretty well versed, and we're not FBI experts, but we're pretty well versed in a lot of their operations and a lot of the approval processes that they've got to go through. It was very similar to what we went through. So Josh and then Luke. So at what point, in your opinion, should the FBI or the government at any level be allowed to spy or conduct surveillance, whatever you want to call it, on U.S. citizens?
Never. They should never, without a proper warrant. That is a warrant that has been approved using factual information.
Factual.
And I'm not talking about it's factual according to the FBI, right? Because they omitted information to get the FISA warrant against Roger Stone, which had the judge known the information that they omitted, the FISA court even came back and rebuked the FBI and was like, if we would have known that, we would have never approved that FISA. So unless there is probable cause and there is a warrant that has been signed by a judge, in this case, the FBI, it would be a FISA judge or spine, then the answer is never without that warrant. And it has to be a good warrant, because after that, if not, then, it's fruit of the poisonous tree and all that. And it's a violation of Constitution, 4th, 14th Amendment. The better question is, at what point does the FBI at what point are they brought to heel? That's the better question.
Well, that was my next question.
Okay. Yeah. So at what point are they brought to heel? We see all these politicians tweeting about it, saying, oh, the FBI is spying. It's like, you're in Congress, man. Well, maybe you should run for Congress, and when you get elected into office, you should do something about it. I'm waiting for the oversight of the FBI to do something about it, to bring these people to heel, to bring them to justice. You look at the FBI whistleblowers, which the FBI said they're not whistleblowers, so they shouldn't be afforded the protection of whistleblowers. It's like, no, they're actually whistleblowing on you. I don't think you get to decide who's a whistleblower or not. That's kind of like the fox guarding the hen house in a way. Yeah. I mean, even those four guys came forward, and did you see the Democrats rake them over the coals? Called them liars, called them this, called them that. Now, mind you, much like women, we were to believe all women, 7 years ago. And when Eric Ciarmella came out, yep, I said his name, Vindman, and all those, and we were told we must believe the whistleblowers. We have to believe the whistleblowers. Now all of a sudden,
which Vindman wasn't even a whistleblower.
No,
they're trying to go back post de facto and declare him a whistleblower.
Yeah, he was just, that dude was just trying to get an extra box of fudge rounds. He was not a whistleblower, but it was like, you got to believe these guys. You got to believe these guys. But now all of a sudden, don't believe these whistleblowers. Believe the ones before, but not these guys. I don't understand how people continue to accept this. And it's a, we've been told that we have to trust these agencies. We have to. We cannot denigrate these, these bastions of integrity. But yet they'll be the first ones to say, well, the FBI spied on Martin Luther King Jr. Right? Oh, okay. That one? We're supposed to trust that one. Oh, okay. Right? Their investigations, the Durham report came out. The Durham report came out and was like, yeah, it never should have happened. And when it came out that John Brennan briefed Obama, Biden, Rice, and others in the Oval Office of Hillary Clinton's plan to try and smear Trump with the Russia collusion thing in August of 2016, and we're to believe that the FBI is beyond, their integrity is beyond reproach. Are you kidding me? And now it's come out, what was it, 3.4 million Americans that they pulled data on illegally? So my question is, at what point are they held accountable?
Whew.
Luke?
So, to the original thing, and I'll get to that one. The original thing on Roger's question, FBI wiretapping and spying, right? I'm with Josh, proper warrant with legitimate probable cause. Boom. It's got to be legitimate. Now,
Now let me follow up with that.
okay, I'm
So
not done.
they grant a warrant.
Uh-huh.
Or no, hold on, let me think, because this goes into the rest of your thought process, or I want it to. So they grant a warrant, and I get this from Ted when we were talking about red flag laws, and then we start talking about due process, and it's like, hey, I have no problems with going in front. It'll never happen, but legislation comes about and says, okay, you get to appear in front of a judge and plead your case and defend yourself. And even at that point, they take it. Ted actually brought up an idea. He's like, hey, yeah, and it needs to be valid for no more than 30 days. Like every 30 days, you should have to go back, because otherwise it'll be infinite, right? So the warrant, do you think there should also be a time limit? So you get a warrant. Is there a reasonable time that should be valid? And there might be a reasonable time.
100%.
100%.
30 days is more than reasonable. I almost go to 15 days, but this ties into my other couple points I jotted down here on your question. Let's call it 30 days. And I think that's more than generous. I think it's more than generous. The three of us have been in this field for a while. And if you're at day, 20 and you're like, you know what, we're getting good stuff, you take it back before a judge, and the judge is just like, yep, okay, we definitely need an extension
Exactly.
because I'm seeing more probable cause here. I'm seeing more probable cause. At some point, you got to trust the judges, right? It's getting harder and harder. But here's the thing. I said proper warrant, legitimate probable cause, and let's add in there 30 days. Let me just add this in here. Scrap the FISA. Stop it. Just stop it right now, and I'll tell you why. On my third point, I'll tell you why. My second point is there have to be serious, straight criminal allegations and evidence to bring before the judge for probable cause, which leads to my third point, which is why I say do away with FISA. And this ties into answering your question, Josh, of where do we start? My third point, no national security or counterintelligence matters. Take that away from the FBI. Take it away from the FBI, because you look at all the scandals and all this stuff they've been embroiled in, and that goes to Martin Luther King all the way to today, back to Hoover. All the stuff that they've done that's just really come out had to do with national security and counterintelligence, which leads to another question I'm going to kick to Roger. He's always asking the hard questions. I'm going to ask him. How do you bring them to heel? I think you start there. I think you start right there. No more of this national security and counterintelligence stuff. That is no longer your playing field, FBI. And that's and this is to you, Roger. And I don't know if you're ready for it or not, but if you're not, then Josh could answer it. If that's the case, and if we all three agree, yes, we're going to take those authorities away from the FBI, and they are going to focus on crime. They're going to focus on Al Capone and white collar criminals and the Sam Bankman-Frieds of the world and things like that. We're going to focus on that. So my question at that point is, who takes those authorities, right? Now, we were all three Army counterintelligence special agents, and you know what? I kind of liked where our authorities were. They were very, very narrow. Now, I think for a while, I don't know if it's like this now, and I'm almost sure it is now. You could actually affect arrest authority if it was within your authorities, which were very narrow. And it had to do with, they have to be a member of the Army or associated with it, very close contractors, whatever. And it has to be, a straight counterintelligence espionage type thing. And only then did we have any type of authority to, quote unquote, violate anyone's rights. And as both of you know, it was very stringent on what we could or couldn't do. And I think that's a good thing. We used to bitch about it back in the day when we were stupid. We're like, what can I get this procedure? Why is this bullshit? But hey, man, it's good. Right now that I look back, it's like, man, it was good. It needs to be like that. So Roger, back to who takes those authorities? I mean, it's an interesting question, right? Because somebody's got to be the executive authority on that. So, would we go against everything that we believe and grow the federal government and make an entirely new organization within the executive branch under the Department of Justice? How would that work?
Yeah, maybe that's what you do, or you break it up, or take what you already have and break it up, or when you abolish the ATF, you can just take those positions and transfer it over to some national intelligence
I love that.
organization that, like you said, very, very specific, authorities. They call it special agent, right? And it's kind of cool because all of us, when we were going through the schoolhouse back in our young 20s, you're like, yeah, man, I'm a special agent, and they're like, well, no, special actually means special as in limited jurisdiction. You have special jurisdiction. It's just not overarching, right? They're very, you have a very finite scope, a very well-defined scope of what you can and can't do. So I would like to see that at the, at the national level, because I think especially with the way the FBI is now, and it's not just the FBI, you throw the agency there, because I've had these notes around for a long time, and it doesn't directly relate to this, but I'm just going to read a couple of these off, and people can Google this stuff, because I do want to do an episode on this one day. But Google MK Ultra, Google MK Naomi, Google Operation Northwoods, Tuskegee Experiment, Operation Mockingbird, poisoning St. Louis, poisoning foster children. The authorities there are just too broad, and Josh has brought it up at, before previous episodes. It's not, it wasn't too far long ago that, we had the president put U.S. citizens in camps, right? So we're not far removed from that. But now all of a sudden we're expected to believe that, well, they're trustworthy, and you are unpatriotic if you sit there and question the FBI. But then it goes back to what Josh said, where, okay, well, where's the accountability? I would trust the FBI when I start seeing some of these people in jail. Okay, fired, in jailed, punished, whatever. Let me tell you about the FISA warrant. And I know we've got some listeners out there that are probably more well-versed at this than us. I'm just pulling up straight stats. So, whatever. In the history of the FISA from 1979 to 2017, the latest numbers. So there were 41,222 FISA warrants as far as requests. Do you know how many were denied? Take a guess, Luke. 41,000.
I'm going to go with
requests. How many were denied?
47,000 requests. How many were
41,000?
41,000. I'm going to say 200. And I hope.
Okay. How about you, Josh?
I'm going to say less than 100.
Okay. Out of 41,222 requests, 85 were denied.
Way to go, Josh.
And, it gets better. It gets better. Of the 85 that were denied, 64 of them were done in 2016 and 2017.
Unbelievable.
Sweet Jesus.
We went a period, check this out. We went from 1979 to 2003 before we saw the first denial.
Yeah. Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, if you go back, you take a look at at the CIA. I mean, the CIA, other than, being complicit in the assassination of U.S. presidents, the CIA at the time.
There you go. Now, so this video is not going to be on YouTube. We're going to get.
We're going to have FISA warrants on us.
Listen to it on the podcast.
We will not be one of the 84. I can tell you that right now.
No. Well, you go back. So, the agency complicit in that. The agency's been, at the time in the 60s and 70s, dude, they were opening U.S. citizens' mail.
Hold on, let me add to this before you keep going, because this is funny. So when they started this in 1979, they had 199 requests. You know how many were approved? 207. They actually had more approvals than they had requests.
It's absolutely insane. But you know what's you know what's really interesting? Take a look at the name of the act in 1978 that established the FISA courts. It was called the USA Freedom Act. The USA Freedom Act. Now, what got passed and what was that? 2004 that gave the government way broad power. The Patriot Act. It's always under the guy like the worst abuses against the Constitution are always under the guise of, something patriotic. It's patriotic to do this. It's it's for the good of the people, right? And since I just got done reading The Stranger about Albert Camus again, the good of the people is always the alibi of tyrants. But the Freedom Act, that was what established the FISA courts that allowed them to abuse your constitutional rights. Freedom, baby. Absolutely crazy.
Okay,
Absolutely
so
crazy.
Josh, what is your view on if we took all the national security and counterintelligence authorities away from the FBI? I love Roger's thing on abolish the ATF and just, you don't lose any people. They can do the ICTAP. I think it's ICTAP, and they can go get retrained to do all the stuff, all that stuff. But where do you nest that? I mean, I guess you have to nest it on the Department of Justice.
It has to, yeah. You have to nest it under the DOJ, unfortunately, which is another probably the most corrupt and woke organization in the executive branch right now. You probably have to nest it in there. Regardless, I'll say a quick note on the ATF. Yeah, I like Roger's idea. You abolish the ATF, but you don't get to rehire those people to go have intelligence authorities. You don't get to hire the same people, Roger. They're not all of a sudden going to be good people.
You take them to the FBI, and then you take the good FBI agents and you move them to their own national
Are there good
intelligence
FBI
organization.
agents? Are there?
I
There's
can say
Are there
for a
really good
fact,
FBI agents?
yeah, there's a few,
probably
man.
4.
There's a few.
5.
Okay, there might be a handful. No, everybody in the ATF, they get fired. They're never allowed to work in government service again. Half of them are going to jail for abuses of of power and violating people's constitutional rights. The only people that are going to be able to go with just an apology are probably the janitors. That's it. Everybody else, tarred and feathered. But yeah, so you abolish the ATF regardless of what happens with the FBI's intel and law enforcement authorities, but you do have to nest it under the Department of Justice. And yeah, not to grow the government, but you have to have those somewhere.
You brought up an interesting point, Josh, which you'd said in the chat, DHS question mark. I think we all three agree that DHS, being the third largest employer within the federal government, is way too big. It's way too big. But I do also believe that there are functions within DHS, specifically ICE, Border Patrol. I think that the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency is a good one. There are a lot that do need to go away. But you said, would you nest that under DHS? And maybe the investigative portion of it that is then sent to Department of Justice, because as you both know, DHS has to refer stuff to Department of Justice. They do have Homeland Security investigations, which is kind of a ridiculous organization.
I mean, the CI portion, right?
Yeah.
The CI authorities would nest well under DHS.
Yeah, but and the prosecutorial obviously would go to Department of Justice, right? Once it gets to that level. But yeah, I mean, I don't think, we're talking a serious overhaul, and I think that DHS's name should also be changed, but to something else. I don't have any idea what that would be. But
the Gestapo's already been taken.
The Cheka is already gone. Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think all three of us agree there need to be some serious overhauls done, but I thought that was an interesting point, the DHS thing.
And I didn't run with it, but because that was just an initial kind of hit my mind. But I think that makes more sense because if the DOJ is obviously going to be the hammer, there has to be an advocate for the citizen, for the individual, right? So it's like the prosecution and the defense. So you have the CI investigative arm under DHS, and then they refer, okay, here's the case that we have. They refer it over to the DOJ for prosecution. One of the things that we have to do, though, and I hate it. It drives me nuts. We have to stop. We have to get away from the head of the FBI and DHS. All the we have to stop making them political appointees because it turns around and it takes those individuals turn around and they inject policies that are whatever the administration is telling them to do, and at some point the executive branch can't have the Department of Justice at its beck and call persecuting its political opponents how it wants to, because that's just it doesn't work.
You may or may not
Right.
know this, but is the FBI director a political appointee?
10-year term.
It is? Okay.
Yeah, because guess who appointed Chris
Well,
Wray?
Trump. Remember, that was the big deal with Comey, was that typically they do 10 years. And Josh, maybe you know more about this, but my understanding, I'll Google it while you guys are talking. But my understanding was they're appointed, they do a 10-year term, which pretty much was just a gentleman's agreement.
Yep.
And then Trump was like, "Yeah, you can go F yourself, get the hell out of here," which now makes sense why he said that.
Yeah. The FBI director is a political appointee. Obviously, the agency is a political appointee. DHS, Mayorkas, political appointee.
All the secretaries are, for sure.
Yeah, like that has to stop. That has to
not to
absolutely
exceed
100% stop.
10 years. So I guess generally they just let it go 10 years. They appoint somebody else, and that's kind of been the understanding. And then Trump, came in and was like, "Yeah, F that."
10 years as the head of that's nuts. Like that's absolutely nuts. Could you imagine Comey being in charge of the FBI for 10 years, for a decade?
Dude, that guy was
like, that's crazy.
That guy was over his head, even if it was for 10 minutes. I mean, I'm so outraged that he in particular, he and Peter Strzok, those two in particular, have the gall to get on Twitter and start talking mess. It's just, I can't believe, especially after the Durham report, which just shows how bifurcated this country is. Half the country read the Durham report as like we three did, and the other half of the country is just like, oh, well, this totally exonerates the FBI. I mean, I saw people on Twitter saying, well, this exonerates the FBI and basically proves that Trump was spying for. And it's like, how are you seeing this? You are seeing a completely different reality than what's on paper. But the fact that this Peter Strzok guy, and that you remember that little look he gave? It's a meme now. I'm trying to do it. I can't even replicate it. It was so
that was actually pretty good.
It was it? Thank you. Yeah. But the guy is just, there is no amount of shame that could be dumped on that dude where he still wouldn't think that his shit doesn't stink. That guy is an irredeemably large piece of crap. And it's like, that's one of the guys, we need to do another episode where we pick like 5 people that we'd love to fight and then, describe how you think the fight would go. And
Adam Schiff, dude. I want to punch that dude in the face so bad.
Peter Strzok.
And what's the other dude?
Kinzinger.
Adam Schiff.
Kinzinger.
Him and what's his face from California? Fang.
Swalwell.
Swalwell.
Yeah.
Swalwell.
Right there,
and I'm gonna throw. He's not an elected official, thank God. But I'm gonna throw David Hogg in there. I'm gonna throw David Hogg in there.
He beat him with his own arms.
I would. You could literally beat that kid with his own arms.
You're hitting yourself.
Dude.
Stop hitting yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It was like I saw the best meme, and it was him in a T-shirt, and it was like it said, "Don't give up your guns," because David Hogg already did, and it shows like his arms. His arms are so small. He has zero muscle tone. He looks like Zuckerberg. And like people who have zero muscle tone scare me because I don't know that they're human. They may be lizard people. He has zero. How do you have zero muscle tone especially in your arms. It's like you're a man. You are a male, and you have zero muscle tone in your arm. You don't have to, like Luke said, you don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, man. You don't have to be, CT Fletcher out here with some 22-inch body. But my God, you have no muscle tone. But David Hogg, dude, I'd fight that dude.
I think if we
Fight
get
that dude in a
if
heartbeat.
we do a segment of an episode where we talk about the 3 people we'd most love to fight, there has to be a rule that one of the people has to be, you don't know if you'd win or not, right? And if Comey wasn't so old, I would definitely put Comey in there. Let me explain to you why. I don't know for a
He's like 6'10".
yeah,
or
exactly.
6'8".
He's huge, and I've got
He's
Really?
like big game
oh yeah,
James,
he's a
dude. He'd break
big
you in
kid.
half.
And it's like, okay, I had somebody explain this to me one time, and this is why there's weight classes in UFC nowadays, right? Like our listener, Scott. Scott is a big boy, right? And I know Scott could fight, but let's say that Scott couldn't fight. Scott's a big boy. He outweighs me by a lot. Even if my skill level was, on point like it used to be, it would be tough for me to beat him because he outweighs me by, 50 pounds. Dude, for every 10 pounds someone outweighs you, your skill level has to go up exponentially. So in order for, a 160-pound dude to beat a 215-pound dude, he's got to be good. He's got to be like UFC level to beat somebody like in a bar fight, because all that weight, right? So that's why I say Comey. I think I could beat him because he's old, and I think I could take advantage of that. But if he was in his prime, the same man, I don't know if I could beat him because he's huge. He's like big game James, man. He is a big boy. So yeah, when we do that segment, we'll have to come up with, I want to fight this dude just to see how much pain I can inflict before he beats me up. Because I guarantee, bro, if I'm fighting James Comey, even if he beats me, that dude's coming out he's coming out with one less eye. Put it that way. He's coming out with one less eye. He's coming out with a lot of bite marks, and I'm gonna fish hook him. Oh, fish hook him like that. It's gonna be messy because that's how much I can't stand the dude. I just want to inflict pain. I don't care if he kills me, but he's gonna remember that fight. Now I'm getting worked up again.
Now, so real quick, and I'll kick it over to Josh. So I want to just do a real quick summary on the Durham report. And I did go back and look at the history of FBI directors for, several years. It doesn't look like too many have actually gone 10 years. It looks like a lot of them just do 2 or 3, saw a couple 5 years or whatever. So I was incorrect on the whole, most of them do 10 years thing. But so the Durham report, 4 years, $6.5 million, Crossfire Hurricane, no evidence of deep state plot, brought criminal charges against 3 people, lost both cases that went to trial. The third case, the FBI lawyer pleaded guilty to altering an email that was used to support a surveillance application. FISA warrant. And the FBI lawyer was not jailed or anything, probably just reprimanded, and you got to go do some pro bono work or whatever. Here are the 4 points that came from the Durham report. Durham said the FBI was more cautious of allegations of foreign influence when it came to the Clinton campaign and did not pursue evidence in 2 cases of foreign governments trying to gain influence with Clinton while providing defensive briefings, unlike they did with the Trump campaign. Durham said the FBI was overly reliant on investigative tips from Trump's political opponents and did not rigorously analyze the information it received, which extended the investigation and led to the appointment of special counsel Robert Mueller to investigate Trump. Durham said the FBI decided to move ahead with Crossfire Hurricane despite a lack of information from the intelligence community that corroborated the hypothesis on which it was predicated, and FBI agents ignored information that exonerated key people in the case. And Durham suggested that Crossfire Hurricane was triggered by the so-called Steele dossier when it was in fact based on a tip from an Australian diplomat in London that a Trump campaign aide appeared to have had advanced knowledge about Russia releasing damaging information on Clinton. And so that right there is just damn. So basically, they just made stuff up. Okay, you have a political appointment, or you have a political opponent, and they obviously want to win. So they are going to weaponize, which you're supposed to be a House committee on this now, right? They're going to weaponize parts of the federal government to go after their political enemies, their political opponents. And they're going to say whatever. That's like me saying, you know what? I want to go to C2 from C3, so I'm going to call the FBI and I'm just going to give them tips on Josh. And they're going to just run with it. And they're going to arrest Josh, right? That's essentially what the FBI did. And then you look at, the illegal surveillance, the FISA stuff. But here's the bigger picture of this. And this is more damaging. And Luke said this the other day, and this kind of ties in with the whistleblowers, right? It's a little bit of a tangent, but to me, outside of just not trusting the FBI in general, this is the biggest problem. And I'll throw it to you for your thoughts, Josh. So I can get behind Julian Assange as far as I accept him as a journalist. Maybe a crappy one, but how he received the information, what he did, that to me is within the realm of journalism. My opinion is, he's probably being falsely prosecuted for that, or accused for that aspect of it. But what it does do is it lays a foundation for people like Ed Snowden, who is a complete piece of crap. Okay, who was not a whistleblower. The guy is just he's a treasonous piece of crap. But what it does is when you see stuff like this, because this is only what we know with one political individual, Donald Trump, right? So this didn't just start happening in 2016. This has been going on for decades with other political personnel and folks running for office. So when you see this, you almost say, well, you know what? It leads credence to what Ed Snowden did. Not for me necessarily, but to a lot of people. And when Luke said that, I was like, yeah, man, because a lot of people that are middle of the road that may not work in this industry, may not work in this community, and you see how the whistleblowers are being treated. If I'm at home, I'm like, yeah, Ed Snowden was absolutely right in doing what he was doing or what he did. Though we know it to be different, but you see what happened here, you see what happened with the whistleblowers. You're like, well, man, he didn't have a choice, because otherwise he would be up there in front of Congress and they'd be calling him a liar, and they'd be calling him unpatriotic, and they'd be shipping him off somewhere else and firing him, suspending him, and everything else they did. I mean, is that something that you agree with, or you have a different opinion?
No, I completely agree with it. And I think Luke was 100% spot on. This just gives them more ammo to justify what Snowden did. And I completely agree with you. Assange is a journalist. All right. Assange was given information that he did not have access to, he would not have otherwise have had access to, and he released it. He was no different than Woodward and Bernstein, investigating, the break in at the Watergate and all the president's men. Right? They were given information that they otherwise would not have had access to, and they put it out there. All right, so I have zero issue with Assange in that regard, and the WikiLeaks stuff. Obviously, Snowden, reality winner, and these others, completely different story. In this, apparently this kid Teixeira, allegedly, uh, you know, but the FBI, the way they're treating the whistleblowers, I think Luke is spot on. It's to justify what Snowden did, because it does. People get to a point where we're like, well, man, I'm not going through that. I'm not going to be. Nobody's going to believe me, so I'm just going to dump this shit and give it to a reporter, give it to the Intercept or somebody, and let them publish it and be done with it. And to just to tack on to the FBI, what also was in the Durham report that some people didn't read. There were 4 open criminal investigations into Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, specifically for taking donations, illegal donations from countries like Russia, was specifically named. These investigations were opened in the New York City field office, the WFO, which is the Washington DC field office, and the field office out of Little Rock, Arkansas. They were all in, and there was 2 out of one of the offices, so 4 total, that were opened against the Clinton Foundation, and specifically Hillary Clinton, in 2016. And guess what? They were all shut down in 2016 when Hillary, was basically thought that they were, she was going to be the next president. They were all shut down. Now, we're supposed to believe the FBI. We're supposed to, place them on this pedestal. Get out, whatever. It's whatever. You know what? Yeah, I said his name wrong. I don't care. I don't care, Luke.
I'm just.
Like, I don't care. I'm glad you
didn't
typed
have
that
to.
in there, though.
You didn't have to put that out to everybody. I'm just trying to help you.
I know. I don't.
He's like
Whatever.
Anchorman. He's going to read whatever is on the chat board.
Well, I'm like Luke, because Luke reads everything that's typed into the chat too.
No,
right?
I'm really bad at that.
Yeah, you read almost everything. I thought about typing just some some nonsense in there and have you have you come on out of the closet and tell everybody, something like that. But yeah, no. So that's my thoughts on that piece, Roger.
So, Roger, did you have another thing you wanted to touch on, or can I touch on something else?
No, it's all you, brother.
Okay, so this border issue, right? Is that too political, Josh? Can we talk about the border?
Do we start talking politics 30 seconds into this episode?
Well, local politics is, a little, I don't know.
No, we started talking politics when you were defending John Fetterman, looking like he was going to the Catalina wine mixer, up there, talking to people.
There's an actual Catalina wine mixer, by the way. There's
really?
Yes, and it started. You know when it started? After Step Brothers. After the movie, they actually start. I don't think they call it the Catalina wine. They call it something else, but they started yeah. So there's an actual thing, the Catalina
That's
wine
hilarious.
mixer. Bam, bam. Love that movie. I watched that the other day. Again, so good. Okay, Roger. So the border thing, right? There's so much going on down there that is sorely misrepresented, and the administration is taking every advantage of misrepresenting what's going on. So let me give a quick rundown, very quick. I don't want to give too much of a background on Title 42 because we talked about it a lot. But I talked to my mom today, actually, about the show, and she's like, I'm sorry I haven't listened. I was like, well, you need to listen to this latest one. And she goes, that's good because I want to know more about Penny and what's the other guy's name? Daniel Penny and Neely. Yeah, she wants to know more about that. And I was like, well, Mom, here's the thing: is that a lot of times we will start talking about these issues, assuming that all our listeners know about the issue itself. So we don't. Roger's really good at giving a background of the issue. Josh and I will jump right into it and talk about the repercussions of what it means. And Roger will back up. Yeah, come on, Roger. You're good at this. He'll back up and say, okay, let me give you a quick rundown of what's actually going on. So I told my mom, I was like, well, you're going to hear about what we think about it, but we don't really talk much about the issue itself. So back it up to the border, they rescinded Title 42, which was basically a COVID era restriction to kind of cut down on who's coming out. So you can immediately refuse someone because it's like, no, we got COVID coming on. If you come from these 6 countries or whatever, you can't come in. So those people knew via social media, Mexicans, Guatemalans, El Salvadorans, who am I missing here? Haitians, and there were a couple other.
When the Venezuelans?
They actually weren't rolled up under Title 42, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
I'm missing a country, but you get it, right? So those people knew that they weren't going to get in. So you didn't have a lot of Mexicans. You had a lot of Mexicans sneaking across, but you didn't have anybody coming in and claiming asylum, right? So, and going through the actual process. So now Title 42 ended. So everyone was kind of expecting this mad rush of migrants coming in and claiming asylum, because believe it or not, this is where I get a little bit, some people call me liberal. I think that there are some people in Mexico who have a legitimate fear for their life, because as you may or may not know, there's some cartel activity going on down in Mexico, and some people get crossed with the cartel and they just cannot live there anymore. So they come in, they claim asylum, maybe they have a legitimate claim. That's up to the courts to decide. But that's all gone. Well, the Title 42 is all gone now. So everyone was expecting this mad rush. Well, it didn't happen. Okay. The mad rush, well, there may have been a rush, but the processing centers weren't overwhelmed. They weren't overwhelmed. That's important to note. Instead, what has happened is, and I saw a news article on this and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I think I talked to you guys about this. It said, in place of Title 42 restrictions, the administration is now enforcing Title 8 immigration restrictions. Yeah, Title 8's been around for a really long time. That's our actual policy. So I'll give the Biden administration some credit on this. They're now enforcing actual policy that should have been enforced this entire time. It's very strict. It's very straightforward. Yes, Title 8. Yes, I think it does need to be, boosted up a little bit. I think it not necessarily needs to be rewritten, but there do need to be additional restrictions. But hey, it's a start. At least we're enforcing the current policy that's on the books. That said, behind the scenes, the overall numbers haven't dropped significantly. Okay. There are still a shit ton of people coming in, but the administration is playing it, Roger, as if, look at how great we are. We were expecting this mad rush, but now we got the Texas National Guard down there putting up concertina wire, and it's going great. I mean, Biden actually said it. It's going great down there. It's a huge improvement. No, bro, it's not an improvement. You just didn't get the rush that you thought. Now, I will say this, Roger. I am not completely convinced that the rush isn't going to come. I think I put in the Slack chat, I think it's going to be a slow developing chaos. That's what I put. I still maintain, I still say this is going to be a slow developing chaos because now that they're enforcing Title 8 and actually turning people away, and Josh is always saying it, he's like, well, if somebody comes to Venezuela and they land in Mexico, they got to claim asylum in Mexico. That's what our policy is. You can't just, and Mexico's going to deny your claim, by the way. But if you, that's the first question that's supposed to be asked if someone's claiming asylum. It's like, did you claim asylum in Mexico? No, it's not, the question doesn't even need to be asked. You're coming from Mexico. So I don't know, Roger. I mean, I think that when I say slow developing chaos, the reason I say that is because this is not going away. There's still people crossing in large numbers. It hasn't slowed down. We just haven't had that mad crush yet. The administration is playing this like it's a big success, but those people are still coming over, and they're going to have to answer for that eventually, and they're going to ease up on Title 8, and I think we're going to have even more people coming within the next 30 to 60 days.
I think it's already happening. What you're seeing is you're not seeing it in the numbers, and you're not seeing it in the numbers for a couple of reasons. One, the administration is taking advantage and taking credit for what Texas is doing with the National Guard, which I applaud that. I think you have to do everything you can, and then I think you have to bring some type of legal lawsuit against the federal government because, let's face it, I mean, the states, they're not going to be able to afford to keep them down there forever. And there's also time limits you have that, keep National Guard folks down, activate them, keeping them down there on the border and what have you. What's happening though is your gotaways are going to increase because, like you said, your numbers decrease because you can legally turn them away now, right? You can legally turn. So all that means is they come across illegally. That's exactly what happens. So, I think you're absolutely right in that it's a slow burn, but you know what? I don't even know if you can say it's just a mad rush. The flood is happening. It's the flood in the attic that you don't see, or the flood that you have in the basement behind the drywall. It's like, oh, you know what? There's no water on the floor here. Well, that don't mean that your house isn't flooding. I mean, you still got a leaky pipe. So the bottom line is it comes down to securing your border. If you don't secure your border first, they are coming, whether you see them, whether you count them, whether you're in your weekly numbers or monthly numbers or whatever the heck it is. They're going to come here. And my guess would be, like with the gotaways and the illegals that come across, you're going to see those significantly go up. They're going to come across, and it's supposed to be because that's the problem with the asylum seekers, right? It's the country of first entry. That's supposed to be the policy. Is that the first country they come to outside of the one that's persecuting them. They're supposed to say, hey, I'm claiming asylum, and with an agreement that we have with Mexico and Central America, they are supposed to accept them. The problem is that's not happening. They're coming all the way up to the border. They're going to come to the U.S. We're going to turn them away. They're going to walk back across the border, and then the next day they're going to swim across the Rio Grande, or they're going to go to Mexico. And I tell you, I wish Arizona would do what Texas is doing. Throw the National Guard down there at the border, throw up concertina wire, and lock it down and push them all through California and let California deal with it. I mean, you're already seeing all of these cities that were sanctuary cities, right? Everybody praised them, 4 years ago. And then all of a sudden when, red state Republicans started sending these folks to those cities, it was like, oh, now all of a sudden we're inundated. And we are already seeing it here in Arizona. It was like the second day after Title 42 ended. And we were talking about a little bit on the podcast. We're like, hey, we'll let this simmer for about a week before we talk about it. And the papers here, like the Tucson Daily or whatever the heck it is, they were applauding. Oh, we're not seeing the rush. Admin's doing a great job. It's like, no, that's not the case. Believe me, they are still coming across. I'll just be curious to see how the numbers play out for the rest of the year because they're already astronomical. It's like the Biden administration. What was inflation last month? Like 5%, 4.5, whatever the heck it was.
I think it was 4.9.
Again, it's like
4.9.
Yeah, 4.9. So it's like, hey, 4.9. So that's great. So first of all, the Fed wants between 1.5 and 2%. That's general rule of thumb. But it's 4.9 over the 9% that we had the year before. And we've talked about this before ad nauseum. So now over 2 years, looking at 13%. Yay, look at us, man. Build back better. It's like it's all facade. And what bothers me with the administration is, I get it. Politically, we have different ideas. And, again, I think this changed a lot during the Reagan years, where it seems like when I was younger, and granted, I was younger, but it seemed like we had the same objective. Both parties did, generally speaking. There were just different routes of getting there. And now we don't even have the same objective. And now you've got an administration that is just straight gaslighting. I'll go beyond gaslighting. They're just straight lying to you. I mean, they are just straight lying to you. And, you hate to use, well, no, I guess I don't hate to use that politicians because they all lie to you anyway. But, it's like, you're not even trying to spin this thing. I mean, there is no attempt to spin it. It's just, you know what? We're going to do nothing. And, yeah, we're just going to tell you something else is happening. And, 108 million people on Twitter are going to agree with us just because we're Democrats and we're paid shills. I mean, that's how that runs. And that's what's scary to me. That's what's very disheartening to me. There's not even an attempt to spin it anymore. And I'll kick it over to Josh for his thoughts on this thing. But you go back to the Fetterman thing, you go back to what's happening at the border, you go back to Joe Biden. Dude, we need a Biden Fetterman ticket. I want to see that debate. Because, dude, I mean, just it is unbelievable. And I say this a lot, and some of it's tongue in cheek, but some of it's just, man, it's just downright disparaging that you literally have a head of lettuce sitting in the Senate. And then we haven't even talked about Feinstein. I mean, dude, have you seen that lady? Good
Bro, she
Lord.
looks straight like the Emperor from Star Wars.
Bro.
Didn't they come
could
back and like
say-
she had shingles, and now they're saying like, oh yeah, we lied. She had like encephalitis or something.
What?
Yes.
She had encephalitis?
Yes.
That's a brain disease, isn't
And
it?
something else. And
Yeah.
else.
Yeah,
Oof.
and she had something else on top of encephalitis. That's why, dude. That's why she came back in a wheelchair. Dude, she looked straight like the Emperor.
And
And
you know
everybody's
who's
like,
who's beside her in the wheelchair?
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi's daughter.
Yes. I saw that today. I was like, oh my
Bro.
God,
Can't make
it's
this
so
up. You can't make
incestuous
it up.
and nasty.
So anyway, I'll throw it
gross.
over to Josh for his opinions on the border.
Well, I mean, on the border, guys, I mean, I don't think you're looking at the big picture here, because if we totally close down the border, I mean, according to Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I mean, you're going to have vegetables rotting in the fields.
Who's going to pick your lettuce?
Construction sites are going to be empty. Hey,
It's
those
the
are her
Kamala-
words. Those are her words.
Hey, it's the Kamala Harris. we can't close down the prisons, because I need cheap labor. What are you talking about?
Exactly. Right? With Debbie Wasserman Schultz, so, DeSantis, signed a bill basically penalizing employers who hire illegal immigrants. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz came out and flat out, you're going to have vegetables rotting in the fields. And it's like, man, if the GOP doesn't use that in every single campaign over the next couple of years, they're absolutely insane. To get the Hispanic, like, absolutely insane.
There's a little. Malcolm Gladwell did an interesting podcast years ago. It's probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, where he talked about the migration policies and when illegal immigration actually became a thing. And I hate it when anybody rags on my boy here, Ronald Reagan. But it was under the Reagan administration where they totally revamped the migrant worker policy. And growing up in Texas, way back in the day, migrant workers were just a thing. They would come over, they would work for a few months, and they just go right back to Mexico, right? And everything was fine. There was no problem with illegal immigration. But starting with Reagan, when he overhauled that policy, it started to become an issue, which led to what we have today. And what people don't understand, and I had this conversation, it's very frustrating the other day, is that the majority of people coming across right now are not Mexican, not even close. They're not. The majority of the people coming over are Hispanic, but they're not Mexican. People are like, all those Mexicans coming over. Dude, there ain't. The Mexicans are sneaking over, but they're not going through the quasi legitimate process, which is such a joke. It's such a joke. So it's a very frustrating thing. That's a good point, Josh. And I had somebody tell me, and you know what? There's a little truth to that. There's a little truth to what Debbie Wasserman Schultz said. It's like, somebody told me years ago years ago, this was 2000. I'll think of it in a second. 2003. I was talking to a guy who was half Mexican, half white. He looked white. He looked very white. He was like Mexico City, half Mexican. You know what I'm saying? Blue eyes, blonde hair. And he was very passionate about, illegal immigrants. And he was saying, well, what do you want to pay $5 for a head of lettuce? Because that's what it's going to be. And $5 now, a head of lettuce probably does cost $5 in 2023, 20 years later. But there is a point to that. It's like, it is an issue, and Josh hates the unions, and unions are part of this, but you do need cheap labor. You absolutely do need cheap labor. Americans want too much to pick lettuce all day, and like it or not, people who work in feedlots, people who do the dirty work, the micro type jobs, are a lot of them are illegals, or people awaiting asylum hearings that will happen 6 years from now, whenever it is. So if we got to come up with a solution, is all I'm saying. It's like the policy needs to be overhauled. We need to have out of the box type thinkers, right? My question to Roger is, no, I'm going to kick this right back to Josh because I know what Roger's going to say. Oh, I don't know, but Roger's not going to take it the way I want it to go. So I'm going to kick it to Josh. So out of the box thinkers, Josh, we got an election coming up. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. And I know Josh doesn't want to talk about politics, but DeSantis going to announce next week, right? Is DeSantis enough of an out of the box type thinker to kind of get everybody together and come up with some sensible solutions to things like immigration and, the debt limit, which we haven't touched, and all this stuff? What do you think about DeSantis? I think he, what do you think right now where it stands? He's going to announce next week. You think his numbers are going to go up?
Well, put a pin in that real quick. My last out on the border, I'm going to ask our listeners: should one or two of your favorite C3 hosts go down to the border and do some investigative journalism? Specifically, Roger and I. Should we go down to the border and do some investigative journalism?
What about me? Why am I left out of this?
Because you're busy with work, man. You're always busy. I mean, you couldn't even record till 8:15 tonight.
Hey, man,
which is 15 minutes past my bedtime.
I'm not trying to derail your point, but if you wait till July, I might be going with you guys.
All right. I think the three of us on the border for a week, I think we could, probably uncover some truth for
I live on the border daily.
Shut up. No, you don't. Apache Junction ain't on the border.
Whatever.
So,
well, Josh, I know you asked it to the listeners, but man, I'm 100% behind you, man. We should do a give, send, go to raise some money to send C3 down to the border to do some investigative reporting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a no BS for me. Like I've already got the kitchen pass for it. Like I'm down.
Hey man, El Paso, they've got Weller SR all over the place. Specs.
Bro, I'm there since the person who lives in the land of, Weller SR, where, it flows freely, can't apparently get any.
It ain't Weller up SR. Here. The distributors, I'm telling you, the distributors up here, at least in Lubbock, there's one place up in Amarillo where...
Because you don't travel anywhere throughout Texas on a weekly basis.
Yeah, that's true.
Nowhere.
You guys called me on that
Nowhere.
one. My bad. You got me.
See? He was all angry. He's like, man, I ain't got time for this. I ain't got time for this. I'm like, yeah, you've been there like a year, dude.
No, you called me out, man. You got me.
So to answer Luke's question on DeSantis, but I'm serious about the border thing. So I think it'd be a great time. So to answer your thing on DeSantis, yeah, supposedly he's going to announce next week. We'll see if that's true or not. I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna run because he went to Iowa, at the right times and stuff like that. Like just
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. He's been meeting with donors. I think he's gonna run. DeSantis has to figure out a way to connect with younger folks. He has to figure out a way to connect with the younger ones. Is DeSantis an out of the box thinker? I don't know 100%. What I do know, based on his actions as governor, he's not afraid to confront communists. He's not afraid to confront the communist left. And so that in itself is already head and shoulders above the current crop of of Republicans by and large. But he's got to figure out a way to get to younger voters. He does, because the Democrats right now, the Democrats are crushing the GOP in voters from like probably 18 to mid late 20s, I think. Uh, and that's complete conjecture on my part. I don't have any evidence to base that on. Uh, just take it. It's all anecdotal. So can DeSantis figure out the immigration piece? I don't know, and I don't know. There's no easy answer for the immigration piece. You're going to have the best of bad choices to fix it. You can't deport every single illegal alien that's in the United States. You can't do it. The logistics behind that are absolutely insane. Um, but like you said, Luke, and you've said this numerous times, is policy. It's policy driven. You know, are we deporting? I'll ask you this, Luke. So somebody gets arrested, their immigration status gets checked, they're found to be in the country illegally. Are they being deported?
Okay, that's a good question. It's a very good question, and we don't have much time left, so I'll boil it down for you. Excuse me, I'm gonna have to cough. So if they're caught sneaking across, and I think we've covered it on this podcast, there's two types of people. There's people who sneak across and try to get into the interior, and there's people who come across, turn left or right, and go to the nearest border patrol and claim asylum. Okay, the numbers are roughly the same. Okay, and we're talking the millions per year, right? So if
Sure.
someone, to address your question, if someone is sneaking in, because the first one, when they go and claim asylum, that's a whole different process. Okay. But when they're sneaking in, if they're caught within 70 miles, at least in Texas, within 70 miles of the border, yes, they're deported. If they get
Okay.
beyond 70 miles, I'll be honest with you, Josh, no one's looking. No one's looking for them. And local law
Yeah.
enforcement, more than 70 miles from the border, like let's say Nebraska, for instance, if they catch a truckload of people who don't have papers, nothing is done with those people. They're let loose because that's ICE's problem, right? And ICE isn't going to mess with that because you know why? That person hasn't committed a serious crime. Now, when that person commits a serious crime and is arrested and they're illegal, then they're going to be deported for sure, 100%. But the simple
Okay.
answer to your question is no one's looking. No one's looking and no one cares. 70 miles north of the border. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense, and that answered my question. So yeah, I
Which
don't
it
think.
doesn't matter anyway, because with an open border, it doesn't matter whether you catch them deport. I mean, when you
Well,
look at
no,
your
that's true.
local, right, when you look at your, a couple high profile illegals that have committed crimes, yeah, we deported them. What was the shooting in Texas? Deported how many times? Deported 4 times, 5 times.
Or the guy who raped the teenage girl in the diner bathroom.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to matter, because they're just going to come back right back across. And my thing, one day we need to do a deep dive on what we think, because it's actually surprising to me that there hasn't been more immigration reform, because I think there is a lot of common ground there. I mean, to me, it's like, look, just off the bat, and I know there's some pros and cons to it, but it's like, give them a freaking tax ID number. Like if you're from one of the triangle companies or countries, give them a tax ID number and say, you know what, you're subject to the federal minimum wage. That's less than half of what any state minimum wage is out there. Because what's federal minimum wage, like 7.25 or something like that? So say, hey, instead of paying $15 an hour, and I think next year it goes up to like 18 or 16.50 or whatever it is in Arizona. Hey, instead of having to pay 16.50, you can pay 7.25. You can pay the federal minimum wage if they're doing agricultural jobs, whatever. You're shaking your head no.
No, I'm shaking my head because I'm frustrated because it's a complex issue, and we bring this up toward the end of the podcast. It's like I'm telling you, you guys may not believe me. The majority of these, I agree with you, Roger. I wasn't shaking my head in disagreement. It's just frustration because the majority of these
Right.
people coming over are hard workers, dude. They will work it
Absolutely.
to the
Sure.
bone.
Absolutely.
They'll work it to the bone.
And that's my point.
And dude, they're okay. So I'll save this for another one. They work it to the bone,
That's
and
my point though, is most of them are hard workers. Give them a tax ID number so they're not having to, sleep in back alleys. So you can be here, but guess what? You can't vote, right? You're not allowed to go down to your local library and check out a library book or whatever else, Well, I guess then I wouldn't even have a problem because they're paying tax dollars. It's like, we're going to tax your stuff. You're at the federal minimum wage. And you know what? When you're here 10 years and you don't commit any crimes and you want to go apply for your citizenship and you can pass the citizenship test,
but
I don't have a
I
problem
know
with that.
Josh has something to
I
say,
truly don't.
and I'm going to kick it right to you, Josh. I know you were about to cut in, but the problem is, and this is why I was shaking my head and so frustrated, is the state governments and some of these city governments, the large ones, LA, so on and so forth, and they are incentivizing them not to work. They're giving them
Well,
too
like they are
much.
with Americans. I
Well,
mean,
yeah,
they're doing
exactly.
that
And
to
it's
us
just
as
like,
well.
no, dude. You know what? I mean, I hate to say it, but it's like if they're going to come over here and work super hard, and I said earlier, we need that cheap, hard labor. If they're going to do that, okay, well, at least I can get over that. But don't incentivize them not doing that. Oh boy, that sounds super racist, but it is what it is.
I mean, think about it, Josh. If you were to say tomorrow, every man, woman, and child that's here illegally, that's of working age, we're going to give you a tax ID number, and you can legally stay here and work and make 7.25. How many millions of people do you think that would now be accountable, right? Dude, I'm convinced, and that's not the end all be all. I understand that, but that is a way to get a grasp on the problem that's within the border,
It's a start.
right?
Yeah, it would definitely. Luke's right. It is definitely a complex issue, and there's plenty of ways to to incentivize them to work. We definitely don't want to incentivize them not to work. We have too many Americans who are lazy. We don't need any more people here who are lazy. And and Luke is correct. They're hard workers, man. They work their asses off. The vast majority of them. But it's those simple things. It is, hey, you want your citizenship paperwork pushed to the front of the line. Okay, you get your 10 years, then you can put it in. You want to push to the front of the line? Here's the local Army recruiter's office. We'll push your shit to the front of the line.
Boom. Big
You know,
time.
go do a stint in the military, and you get pushed to the front of the line to be a U.S. citizen.
All your recruiting problems solved overnight.
Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of options out there. And Luke's right, we brought this up at the end of the podcast to talk about. We could do multiple podcasts just on the immigration problem, and I think we probably should do some deeper dives into it because it is complex. But yeah, I don't know that we're not going to solve it in the next 8 minutes. Maybe we do the next episode. Maybe we do seriously like a deep dive into immigration and how we fix it, or at least some ideas to fix it. Because you're right, we can't deport everybody. That's just the logistics behind it. Amateurs think tactics, professionals think logistics. As as Chris says a lot.
Man, he's right when he says it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And we find that out on a we have to relearn that lesson a lot on a continuous basis, for sure.
Well, real quick.
So I got a quick shout out.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I got a quick shout out, and I'll throw it over to you, Luke. So one, I didn't even know he listened, but Sally, aka Tom, down in Sierra Vista. Appreciate you listening down there. It's good chatting with you back and forth. Yeah, there's some folks here that we've known for like years, and you know how it is. You move around and you're busy, and every now and then a text comes out of the blue, and it's like, man, I was just thinking about this dude the other day, and you kind of chat back and forth. But definitely appreciate your time. And then my daughter's in her clinicals now, and she's in her second rotation. And her drive, I think, is about an hour a day, one way. So she's got an hour out, hour back. So she's been listening to more Culper's Canteen Cup. So I think she's on episode 6 now.
Wow.
So eventually, I think she's probably not caught up. I'm hoping I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt that she is in the triple digits. But now I'm assuming I guess an hour there, hour back, she's catching an episode a day. I'm not sure how many days that she can actually hear her dad's voice and not throw up, but hopefully it brings you a little piece of home. Hopefully hearing my voice and Josh and Luke's, and hopefully you're learning something. So proud of you, babe. drive safe, and that's my shout out for this week.
I'm proud of her too, man. Tell her to keep going. Way to go, girl. That is a big deal. I don't say that flippantly. That's a big deal what she's doing, getting in the medical field like that. So yeah, I echo what Roger said. Keep it up, girl. So a couple things. Go back and listen to "Don't Call It a Plandemic." I don't know which episode that was, but it was an early one.
Yeah,
Man, dude,
that's right. Good one.
holy
Early,
cow!
early
And
one.
if any listeners are interested in seeing the original video of that, the Plandemic video, hit me up, man. Hit us up. I'll send you the original video because you can't find it anywhere. But man, holy crap! So yeah, shout out to the listener. I didn't want to call out his name, but I texted him during while we're recording, and he said I could call him out. So Rodney, thanks for listening. All the usual suspects, Darren, everybody, man. I really appreciate it. I hope y'all don't get too offended if I don't call you out by name. Ryan, Chris, all you guys, man. Thanks for listening. I want to give a special shout out, and Josh is about to learn this real quick, and I'm looking forward to Josh. I'm really happy for you, Josh. Is that when your kids turn 21 and they come back and visit you or whatever, they'll be able to pick up booze for you when you're running low. So I want to give a shout out to my stepson who never listens, but I had some stuff to do tonight, and I hit him up and I was like, "Hey, you gonna come to the house tonight?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm on my way." I was like, "Where are you at?" He's like, "I'm here." And I was like, "Hey, why don't you pick up a sixer of silver bullets for me?" Because he's 21, man. He's and that was awesome, man. He got to pick up some booze for me, and I transferred some money into his account. It's all good, man. When those kids get to be 21, and they're still around. It's all good, man. They can pick up that booze for you. It's nice, man. It's not,
I
hey,
love it.
go grab me a beer from the fridge or whatever. It's no, you can actually go buy it for me now. So shout out to him. That's good. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. My mom listened to that. She cringing. She cringing right now. But so Josh, why don't you close us out, brother?
No, dude, that's awesome. So yeah, what Roger, your daughter, great accomplishment. Glad she's finally listening to C3, 3 years later, and and getting caught up. She's probably listened to more episodes than all three of my kids have collectively.
Or my
Uh,
wife,
yeah, yeah. I think my
or Big Dave.
yeah,
Good call, Luke, on the post the other night.
yeah. Or the yeah, he does it. He does it. Listen, um, yeah. I think my wife, she listened to I think she listened to episode 2 and she was like, "Yep, I'm good." 'Cause
This was
she gets
rough.
tired of listening to me say
This
this
was
stuff all
rough
day.
back then, bro.
It was rough.
Dude,
It was rough. Our sound's much better now.
I cut it on in the middle of the night. I wait for my wife to go to sleep. And when she's asleep for about 45 minutes, I cut it on her podcast once so we get the stat for the extra play. But then I
I
just
love.
let it play. And she wakes up. She's like, "Were you recording last night?" I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." She's like, "Man, just some like Title 42." And maybe I was just dreaming. I was like, "Yeah, it was
Yeah,
probably Fox News because we're just as good as Hannity. So she can't tell the difference."
that's true. That's true. And so, like Luke said, go back and listen to it. So it's episode 11. Don't call it a pandemic. One of our early ones. Go back and take a listen to that. Maybe pretty interesting now with the news that's coming out, about mask and about vaccines and about ventilators and everything. So yeah, definitely go check that out. So I only have one shout out this week, and she's not going to hear it because she doesn't listen. But my oldest daughter, she's getting ready. She graduates high school here in a couple weeks.
And
A big
congrats.
accomplishment. Thanks. She's graduating. 4.0 GPA, all night National Honor Society, everything. So really, against all my efforts, she got good grades and everything. I'm so glad that she got my wife's brains and looks. Uh, so congrats to her, man. Super happy. She's already knocked out a bunch of college courses. She's gonna go finish up and here probably locally in NC. And yeah, so that's my shout out for the week. And to all the listeners out there, really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us again. And until next time, keep those canteen cups tightly secured.